At last. It's the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Hello and welcome back to The Unfiltered. So today we are going straight back into the Idaho 4 case. And when you look at what happened to those 4 university students, the very first thing that I see is the sheer level of anger that was involved in this crime. So you have to think, what on earth could make somebody this angry that they would commit a crime as brutal as this? And I think this is what made me think that there is a lot more to the story. So when you see rage on this scale, it's not far-fetched to wonder if illegal substances played a part. Now, if any of you have read that book that was written by Howard Bloom, well, he was basically telling us everything all along. I mean, all this new information that has come out is really not new at all. And I'm going to stand by this fact that Howard Bloom knew exactly what was going on around that house. Of course, he thought that people were not paying much attention to it. So it was the summer of 2022 when an ad appeared for the home on 1122 King Road. Now, the rent for this place, well, it was pretty steep. I mean, $2,095 a month. So something we don't often hear about is that there were 6 students who rented this home. Ashlyn Couch, Bethany Funk, Dylan Mortensen, Madison Mogan, Sana Canodal, and Kaylee Gonzalez. Now, nobody really talks about Ashlyn Couch, and I think the reason for this is because although she signed this lease with what Howard Bloom calls great enthusiasm, Ashlyn only stayed in that house for a couple of nights. It was said that there was a boyfriend that was involved. But the thing is, Ashlyn moved out. And apparently, this was also a decision that her mother, who was a real estater, approved of. And I've also heard a lot of stories that not only did she move out, but that Ashlyn was terrified to live in that home. So you've got to wonder about that. Now, when Ashlyn moved out, nobody moved into this bedroom. So you've got this empty room. And when you think about the location of 1122 King Road, it's surrounded by all of these apartment complexes. It has really easy access. So it's kind of the perfect setup for trading narcotics. And remember that this wasn't just any normal student's house. It had a reputation of being a party house. I mean, you had all of these students constantly coming and going. So to me, the idea that this empty bedroom could be used for illegal activities like trading narcotics, well, it isn't that far-fetched at all. We know that at least 2 of the students who tragically lost their lives grew up around parents that were involved in very suspicious activities. And we also know that a lot of college houses are places where students experiment with substances. So I'm not shaming anyone. I think in today's day and age, it's pretty normal. I'm just saying that for most of us, this kind of lifestyle would probably be terrifying. But I think that for these students, it really wasn't entirely strange. And I think this explains why they might have felt comfortable in a situation that would maybe be frightening or unsettling to the rest of us. Now, when you look at this kind of world, you have your top level, your middle level, and then you have your street level dealers. And I mean, those are the guys that are basically really getting their hands dirty. But this whole thing is about money. So let's say you have the guys on the top level and they've laid out $10,000, $15,000. Of course, they're going to expect to get their money back because, well, firstly, they're not getting really involved, but there is a lot of pressure on the middle level guys. So I want to give you an example of this. If you look at the Black Mafia family, now these guys were founded by the Flannery brothers in Detroit, and I mean they expanded their operations across several states, and you had the brothers who were running the top level of this organization. So they were basically coordinating everything. Then you had your middle level guys, and these were kind of referred to as regional managers. I know it sounds weird. And then you had your street level dealers. And the Black Mafia family, they were very efficient. I mean, they even used legitimate businesses as a front to mask what they were really doing. Now, the bottom people in an operation like this are key, because if any of these substances were to go missing or intercepted, stolen, or let's say they were flushed away, well, then this would become an extremely big problem. I mean, these guys are ruthless. So if you think of the steep price of that house, then to me, it doesn't seem all that unusual that somebody who was maybe a middle manager, well, they could easily go over and say that, well, they'd pay the rent in exchange for storing these illegal substances in the house. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to link a video from the good people over on the channel called Outcast. Please go over and look at the full video.
What did you say to Adam? Like, I told Adam.
Now, as you can see, these girls are leaving the grab truck, and Maddie says something very strange. She says she told Adam everything. And you can hear where they say, they're going to get you for this. Go have a look at it. And it leaves a lot of questions in my mind. I mean, what did she tell Adam? She must have said something to say they're going to get you for this. And that is going to bring me to the statement that we had from law enforcement. So if you guys remember, in the very beginning, law enforcement said that this was a targeted attack.
Based on details at the scene, we believe this was an isolated, targeted attack on our victims.
But then they changed their story and they said it wasn't. Then in their statement, they changed it again. And in the end, they said, well, it wasn't a person that was targeted, but it was the house itself that was a target. And this is why I say that that vacant bedroom is so important. Why would you say the house is targeted? I mean, it seems strange. Also remember that law enforcement was called out to this house very often. So you might ask yourself, why would they use a bunch of college children to store these substances? Because it does kind of seem ridiculous, but stay with me on that. It's not really, if you think about it. I mean, law enforcement were over at that house all the time. And the only way anybody would take that kind of risk is if they were familiar with law enforcement. I'm not saying anything here, but or if they were not afraid of law enforcement at all. But so these products are not just chucked into the house. I mean, everything depends on tight handling. These items have to be weighed, packed, stored correctly, and also transported in the right way. I mean, even one mistake or saying the wrong thing can blow this whole operation wide open. Now, when you look at your middle level managers, they often rely on things like rental properties or legit businesses. And this is a front to hide inventory or cash. So it might look very ordinary, but it's very critical in the chain. Because let's say a product goes missing or money goes missing. Well, then you have pressure that travels from the bottom level to the top. And these losses are not taken very well at all. I mean, people are intimidated, targeted, and threatened. And they won't only do this to the individuals, but they'll do it to their families or anybody that is close to them, even their dog. So this is a very common way to silence someone, and even better, to send a warning. And that's why I say that this vacant bedroom in that house, well, it could be very attractive to a middle-level operator. It's good location, it's cheap, it's got a lot of foot traffic, and I say that the events on that night, to me, look like extreme anger. And you have to ask the question, who is it that could be this angry to carry out this kind of crime? So just weeks before the events on 1122 King Road, Kara Knodel, who was Xana's mother, well, she was arrested in Kootenay County, I hope I'm saying that right, on felony narcotics charges. The thing is that this was not her first run-in with the law. You see, she already had multiple past offenses, and according to the records, she entered a plea deal on some of these charges. And not only that, but on the 31st of January 2023, she was again arrested in Spokane for first-degree criminal trespass. So she was very much still in this whole system, and she was involved in a lot of legal troubles. And this was right around the same time as what these tragic events happened. Now, at the time of her narcotics case, her public defender, who was Ann Taylor, decided on the 5th of January, this was the very same day that she first appeared in court to represent Brian Koberger, Ann Taylor officially withdrew from Kara's case. And it is just very strange. I mean, how often does something like that happen? I don't know if it was a coincidence, but it does scream conflict of interest. Now we have Corey Hatrock, and she was Madison Mogen's stepmother. And she also had multiple prior offenses on her record. So she was facing narcotics-related charges in 2022. And just like Kara, she also entered a plea deal to resolve some of these charges. And again, Ann Taylor's office had represented Corey and other members of Madison Mogen's family before Brian Koberger even came into the picture. So now you have both of these women, both tied directly to the victims in this case, and both of them with repeated legal issues. Both of them have taken plea deals, and both of them represented at some point by the same public defender, who is now going to, by coincidence, defend the man who was accused of the unalivings. So when you put all of these details together, it does start to feel a bit weird, in my opinion. So off of that, we go to spring break, and Caden Young was looking to score. And when I say score, I mean that he was experimenting with substances. And sadly, this was a choice that would cost Caden his life. So he was staying with a frat brother named Christopher. I can't say his surname. So after Christopher left for work that morning, Caden Young decided that he was going to take an Uber to Tacoma, and he was going to meet up with some friends. So these friends were going to drive him to Seattle. So just before 1 a.m., Christopher got this very strange call from Caden. And at this point, Caden was in the Harborview Hospital, and he needed a ride home. But Christopher was a bit alarmed, and he asked Caden what had happened. And Caden's words were, "I was dead, bro." So earlier that night, what had happened, Caden had been to a party and an ambulance was called. So while he was at the hospital, naloxone was administered, and this revived him, but just barely. So by 2 in the morning, Christopher arrived at the hospital, and this was to go and fetch Caden. So on the drive back to Centralia, Caden kind of kept nodding off, and Christopher was a bit concerned, but not too much. I mean, they did stop at a Jack in the Box to go and get some burgers. Caden said he was hungry. So once they were back at Christopher's place, Caden then collapsed on the futon in the bedroom, and to Christopher, it seemed like he was snoring or making these loud sounds, and Christopher thought it was kind of funny. I mean, he basically thought that he would record it and they would laugh about it later on. But that's not what happened. Of course, that laughter didn't ever come, because just a little while later, when Christopher went to go and check on Caden, he saw that he had all this whitish vomit around his mouth, and when he checked for a pulse, there was nothing. So by the time the medics arrived, Caden was officially pronounced deceased. This is the only guy who died twice in one night. So police rushed over to room 214 of the Holiday Inn, where Caden had originally taken that lethal dose, and that is where they found Emma Bailey and Demetrius Robinson. Now, these two were just about to leave. Police arrested them and they were charged with one count of conspiracy to commit a violation of the Uniform Controlled Substances Act. And this means that they were accused of supplying Caden with that lethal dose of Fent. So they were held on $100,000 bail, and of course they pled not guilty. Now, they weren't able to post bail, so they were taken to the Lewis County Jail. Charges were filed in March 2023, but this case was dismissed on a technicality, because you see, these charges had been filed in the wrong jurisdiction. I don't know why. Now, when they were investigated further, it came out that Robinson, well, he had a very long criminal history, including prior narcotics-related offenses. And Bailey, well, she just had a DUI arrest in February of 2023. So law enforcement, they did suspect this couple, and they suspected that they might be involved in substance distribution in university towns like Pullman and Moscow. Now, the thing about Emma that is very interesting is that just a week before the unalivings of the 4 university students, well, she was seen at the White's apartment complex. And this is where that famous Idaho 4 group photo was taken. Now, the thing about Emma is her last known address was just 5 minutes from the King Road house. And it gets even more interesting, because you see, Emma Bailey is the niece of Jesse and Candace Bailey. So Jesse and Candace Bailey, well, they weren't small-time thugs. I mean, these guys were running this massive multi-state operation, and they were tied to the Aryan family prison gang. I mean, Jesse grew up around addiction, and he even worked as a prison guard. And that's where he met Candace. And together, they built a highly organized network. They were moving Fent, other substances, and they were doing this all over Washington, Idaho, and Alaska. So when the feds finally caught up to them in this major takedown, they seized huge amounts of narcotics. Not only that, there was cash, weapons. So these two ran quite a violent and well-protected operation. I mean, they supplied their network and made sure that nobody crossed them. So it wasn't just a criminal business. I mean, Jesse ended up getting a 17.5-year prison sentence, and Candace got 5 years. Another thing we know is that Emma Bailey was highly likely friends with some of the students that were living at the King Road house. We know that she was following Ashlyn Couch on social media, and she was regularly spotted at parties that were at the house in the weeks before the tragedy happened. So you have to ask, did she have any connection to that vacant bedroom? And I'm not thinking or saying that Emma had anything to do with the crime itself, but it is very interesting to note how involved she is when you tie in her boyfriend Demetrius, her aunt and uncle, who are very familiar with this kind of world. And it does leave a lot of questions. Again, to me, the crime itself seemed full of rage and anger. And for sure, the ties to the Aryan prison gang is something that I think needs a lot more looking into. But for today, that's it. I'd like to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to drop your comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next video.